In the UK, we are a nation that absolutely loves our hanging baskets, and love them or loathe them, I've got some top tips that will make sure you get the most out of your hanging basket, but also I'm going to show you a couple of different ideas. So if you think a hanging basket isn't for you, then hopefully I'll make you think again. So the sort of hanging baskets that people are familiar with, as well as this classic we have here, are your plastic hanging baskets. And these are great because they're really cheap and they're really simple to do. And because I've got a hot south-facing kind of patio garden and a balcony, I find that Pelargoniums, which are geraniums, work really well. And I love this kind of shock of bright pink again against the blue. It really brightens it up. And one of the brilliant things about Pelargoniums is they don't need much watering. So I don't need to water them too much. They can cope with the sun, they can cope with the wind. So although some people might find them a bit old-fashioned, I just think they're such great doers. So if you don't want to go for just a traditional one flower basket, say Pelargoniums, Geraniums, Begonias, Beezy-Lisies, Fuchsias, then you can mix it up a bit. And there are 3 simple rules to follow when you're planting a hanging basket to get maximum effect. And that is, you need a thriller, you need fillers, and you need spillers. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So what do I mean by a thriller? Well, I'm going to use this gorgeous Calibrachoa, and I just love this orangey red colour. It really sings. But to really make it a thriller, I'm going to combine it with this gorgeous purple, deep velvety purple petunia, and I think the 2 of them together are going to really pack a punch. And then for my filler, these are just the smaller plants that you put around the basket. I'm going to use a white Bacopa. Now, not everybody likes using white in their colour schemes, but I just do. I think it's so pretty. And although these will trail a little bit, mainly they will just fill up around the basket, around the thrillers, and they're kind of like the bridesmaid, if you think about it. So my thriller is the bride, and this is the bridesmaid, even though it's white. And then if you want the spiller, I've got a lovely plant here, and this is a Heliochrysum, and I love Heliochrysums. I love this silvery tinge, and actually they're really great plants for a hanging basket because they trail and they get really long, and also they don't mind being a little bit on the dry side. And another plus, no deadheading. I'm also going to use ivy. Not too much of it because it can take over, but I just love the softness and the way it just will trail down. But again, try not to let this one dry. So as well as doing a more traditional, very colourful hanging basket, I'm going to do something that's a little bit different. So I've got some gorgeous strawberry plants here. Now I love strawberries because not only are they great to eat, they also look really pretty, and pollinators love them. And if you put them in a hanging basket, you're going to be saving them a little bit from slugs and snails. But rather than a basket on a chain, I am going to be using this really sweet little wire basket here. I'm going to line it, and then I'm going to plant my strawberries in, and then I'm going to hang it up. And actually I might even give that as a gift because I think it's really pretty. So when it comes to actually building your hanging basket, a really good peat-free compost. And if you get one that's specially developed for hanging baskets and containers, they tend to hold in more moisture because they will have been developed just to have that little bit extra water holding capacity. So always look for a good hanging basket or container compost because that will work better for you. And then once you've got your basket growing, one of your best friends are these. You need some snips because it's really important to deadhead your hanging basket. Now deadheading just literally means cutting off any spent or dead flowers. So I'll just show you here. Things like petunias, they often go over quite quickly. So I'm going to go to the base and I'm literally just going to snip. And the more you do that, the more your hanging basket plants will keep flowering. So the first thing you need to do when you've got your basket is make sure that it's lined, and then also make sure that the liner has got some holes in, because although we want to make sure our plants are staying moist, we don't want them to end up sitting in water, because then the roots will rot, and that's worse than actually underwatering your hanging basket plants. So I'm looking at this one and it doesn't seem to have any holes, so I'm going to use my little snips and I'm going to put a few holes. Don't put in a massive hole, because otherwise you water it and it will come pouring out the bottom and it won't do your plants any good. And then apart from a watering can, what you're going to need is some plant food. Now I've chosen a tomato feed because it's high in potassium, and potassium is really important for flowering, and that's what I want out of my hanging basket. I want them to keep flowering for as long as possible. So before I start planting up my hanging basket, I just want to give you my top tip for planting, and that is use an old pot. But what you do is you just put your basket on the top of it, make sure the chains are out of the way, and you will find that it just makes it so much easier to use, and then you can turn it round as you start filling up with your plant. So I'm going to be using the peat compost here. I'm going to put it in a tub jug and give it a bit of a mix, because sometimes you'll find with peat free that the bigger ingredients kind of come up to the top. So once you've given your compost a bit of a mix, then it's time to fill up. But I only put in less than half of my compost first, and then I like to start to place my plants. Make sure you cover the moss and don't fill up all the way. When you're planting a hanging basket, you want to make sure that you leave enough of a gap at the edge so you can water, because the last thing you want is to water and then all of it coming over the sides and not getting in to the roots, which is where your hanging basket really needs it. I've partly filled it up, and now the fun bit begins when I start to place my plants, and I always start with my thrillers. So what I'm looking for is quite a full basket, but not completely full, because hopefully these babies will start to grow. And I want to make sure that there is enough compost to sustain them all. But because it's already quite late in the summer, because we've had such a slow start, I probably will put a few more in than I might normally. So I just need to end with my spillers. So I've placed them all, and I'm really happy with where I want them to be. And the next thing to do is to actually start planting them. I've planted all my plants. It's nice and full, but there is room for growth. But what I want to do, I've taken my gloves off, and I just want to make sure that there are no gaps. I'm pushing down, I'm moving the basket around, pushing. And then what I will do is, with my skinny trowel, I will fill in any gaps. So as much as I want to hang my basket up now, just hold your horses. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put it on the ground in a slightly sheltered place, and I'm going to give it a really good water. I'm going to let it drain, and then I'm going to leave it a couple of days, and then I'm going to hang it up. That will give it time just to get a little bit more established, to feel kind of safer and stronger in its basket before I put it up in those slightly scary conditions. Don't ever water it and then hang it straight up, because that's going to be really heavy for you, and also it's going to be harder to maneuver into the position you want. Always water it once it's hanging up, apart from this first time. And I really recommend you leave it for a couple of days just to check there's no gaps. And when you water, sometimes you'll find the compost will slump inwards. So again, you might just need to then fill in any gaps, because gaps are really a killer for a hanging basket. basket. So I've watered this one really well. I'm going to wait, as I said, to see if the compost slumps in a bit and fill it up. So whilst I'm waiting for the water to drain through this big hanging basket, I'm going to get on and I'm going to plant up my strawberry planter. So if you have always thought that hanging baskets aren't really for you and are just about big balls of begonias hanging outside a pub, then do have a go at trying something different. As much as I love this bright pink pelargonium, I'm also really pleased with my strawberries. And also, in time-honoured blueberry tradition, I've made a hanging salad planter. So I've got some salad leaves, some mustard and also some basil, so that will grow really full, and again I can hang it away from the flax. So once your hanging baskets are growing, the top tips is to keep them well watered. Even if it rains, a lot of the time we hang our baskets up under a roof, so it's always under a rain shadow and it won't get that moisture. And in the summer, when it gets hot and it's breezy, then they will dry out really, really quickly. So sometimes you're going to have to water every day, maybe even twice a day. Try and water early in the morning or later in the evening when there's less evaporation. And then my second tip is make sure you feed it once a week after you've planted in a couple of weeks time with a liquid feed, and make sure it's moist before you put in that feed, because otherwise it might just go straight out the bottom. And then another little tip is where you hang your basket up, place a pot with more plants underneath. So when you water your hanging basket, and some of the water will always come out the basket, then you'll get the plants underneath watered and fed at the same time, saving you a bit of time. So go on, do have a go at making your own slightly different hanging basket.